Today we're making a main menu in Unreal Engine 5. I'll walk you through setting up the UI, hooking it up with blueprints, and testing it in your project. Whether it's for a prototype or your main game, you'll have a menu that's ready to use and easy to customize. Let's switch over to Unreal Engine and start the setup. Right now, there's just a spotlight in my viewport. Next, I'll add a character to the scene, since we'll be using our game level as the main menu background. If you want to use the same character, just search for Paragon Character on the Fab Marketplace. It's free, game-ready, and easy to set up in Unreal Engine. I'll also include the download link in the description so you can grab it quickly and follow along with the tutorial. I've just dragged the character into the scene. We don't need to change anything, since it already has an idle animation set up in the blueprint. That means we're ready to move on to the next step. Once you're done positioning your model, click the plus button. Go to Cinematic and add a Scene Camera Actor. Now click on the Perspective button and switch it to the Scene Camera Actor view. Use the WASD keys to move around the viewport and position the camera wherever you want in your level. The camera looks good to me, so now I'll rotate the character a bit, just enough to make sure he's staring straight into our souls. The character's a bit out of focus, so I'll go to the camera settings and set the focus directly on our model. This little color picker tool is super handy for situations like this. Use it to quickly set your focus point and save some time. And that's it. We've adjusted everything, and I think this setup is perfect for our game's main menu background. Now let's switch back to perspective mode. This way, our camera stays locked in place, and we won't accidentally mess up the main menu background. If you have multiple cameras in your scene, I recommend renaming your main menu camera to something recognizable. Makes things way easier to manage. Now let's head over to the content browser. I've got a folder here called Main Menu. You can create something similar to keep your project nice and organized. Right-click anywhere in the content browser, go to Blueprint, then select Blueprint class. From the list, choose GameMode Base, and I'll name mine Main Menu. Now go to the World Settings panel and drag your new game mode into the Game Mode Override slot. If you don't see the World Settings panel, just go to the Window menu and click on World Settings. It'll show up right next to the Details panel. Now click Save to save your project and the new game mode. Then click the Blueprints button at the top and open the Level Blueprint. Here we've got the Event Begin Play node. Let's start by adding a Get Player Controller node to kick things off. Now drag off the Return Value pin from the Get Player Controller node, search for Set View Target with Blend, and add it to the graph. Next, connect the Event Begin Play node to the Set View Target with Blend node. Now shrink the blueprint window a bit and drag the camera we added for the main menu into the blueprint graph. Then connect the camera to the New View Target pin on the Set View Target with Blend node. Now I'll close the blueprint window and let's hit play to test the game. And there we go. Our character is on the main screen with an idle animation already playing. That animation is set up inside the character's blueprint, so I didn't need to make any changes. We're all done setting up the main menu background. Now it's time to move on to the next step, creating the main menu UI. Now right-click in the Content browser, go to User Interface, and click on Widget Blueprint. You'll see only one option, User Widget. Select it and name it whatever you like. I'm naming mine BPW_MM. By the way, BPW stands for Blueprint Widget. It's just a naming convention I use to keep things organized and easy to find later. Now double-click to open the widget, and the first thing we'll do here is design the main menu layout. First, go to the palette and search for Canvas Panel. We'll use this because it gives us full control over positioning UI elements anywhere on the screen. Perfect for designing flexible and custom layouts like a main menu. Now let's scale up the Canvas panel. By default, it's set to 720p, so I'm increasing it to 1080p, but you can go with 2K or even 4K depending on your project needs. But for this tutorial, 1080p will do just fine. Next, I'll add a grid panel as a child of the Canvas panel. Grid panels are great for organizing UI elements in rows and columns. It makes aligning buttons and text super easy and keeps everything clean and structured. Let's set the anchor of our grid panel to full screen. Next, Reset the offsets and make sure all of them are set to 0. If any of the values don't reset to 0 automatically, make sure to set them manually, just to keep everything aligned properly. Now to add columns to the grid panel, click the plus button twice on column fill and set both values to 0.5. Then click the plus button once on our row fill and set that value to 1. Now go back to the palette and add another canvas panel. This will go inside one of the columns we just set up. Since we now have 2 columns, choose the side where you want to place your main menu buttons. I recently made this post on YouTube where people voted for their favorite game, and Ghost of Tsushima came out on top. So for this tutorial, I'll create a main menu inspired by it. I've got a reference of Ghost of Tsushima's main menu open on my second monitor, so I can keep an eye on it while making changes and matching the style. Alright, we've already set up the columns and added our canvas panel. Now to start building the buttons, go back to the palette and search for vertical box. Drag and drop the vertical box into the new canvas panel. Then go to the anchors and set it to the left side. Now resize the vertical box based on the type of menu you're creating. Adjust the width and height to fit the number of buttons and the layout you have in mind. The reason we're using a vertical box is that when we add buttons to it, they automatically align properly inside the box, stacked neatly and spaced consistently. As you can see, the button is placed correctly inside the vertical box, and by default, it's set to fill both horizontally and vertically. We'll adjust the alignment later. For now, let's add some text to the button and remove its background to match our menu style. In the palette, search for text and drag it onto the button. This will let us label the button with whatever we want. Over in the Details panel, you'll find the alignment settings, text color options, and font settings. This is where you can style your text. By default, Unreal Engine comes with the Roboto font, but it will show any other fonts you've added to your project as well. Let me change the typeface to regular to better match the look of the Ghost of Tsushima font. We can also adjust the text size here. I was going to go with 30, but 32 actually looks better, so I'll stick with that. If you want to install new fonts, first make sure your text is selected. Then go to the Font Family section and click the Search in Content Browser button. Minimize the widget editor, and you'll see the Fonts folder. To install a new font, just drag and drop it into the content browser. When the prompt appears, click Yes, and the font will be added to your project. Now that our font is ready to use, go back to the Blueprint window, select the text again, and in the Font Family dropdown, you'll see the new font listed and ready to apply. I'll stick with this font for now, but I might change it later if it doesn't fit the look of our main menu. Now let's move on to the next step. If you remember, the buttons in Ghost of Tsushima's main menu don't have any visible background, so let's remove the background from our button to match that style. Make sure you select the button itself, not the text. Then in the Details panel, look for the background color setting. Just set the alpha channel to 0, and that'll make the button background completely transparent. Now let's add some padding to the bottom of the button. This creates space between each button, just like you see in most menus. You can adjust the padding value based on the style you're going for. I've set the bottom padding to 40, which should be enough to give the buttons some nice spacing, but feel free to tweak it based on your design. Now go to the Hierarchy panel in the bottom left. Select both the button and the text inside it, then right-click and choose Copy. Or just press Ctrl-C or Command-C on Mac. Next, select the vertical box and press Ctrl+V to paste. This will duplicate the button and automatically apply the same padding. I duplicated the button 6 times because I need a total of 7 buttons, just like in the Ghost of Tsushima screenshot I'm using as a reference. I also think the first button needs a bit of spacing at the top to balance things out, so I'm going to add some top padding to that one. Now let's start naming the buttons. Select each text block, go to the text field in the Details panel, and change the label to match your game's menu options. In my case, I'll copy the names directly from the Ghost of Tsushima screenshot. And for a bit of fun, I named one of the buttons Sign In to Gay Station. Just a little throwback to that old PlayStation 5 meme from a few years ago. Gotta keep things entertaining while we work. Now that we've finished naming all the buttons, click Compile and Save to apply the changes to the widget blueprint. Once that's done, close the window and let's jump back into our level blueprint. We've already set up the main menu background. So now let's add the main menu widget blueprint to our level blueprint. Now drag off the output pin from Set View Target with Blend node and search for Create Widget. Then click on the Class dropdown and look for the widget blueprint we just created. In my case, it's named BPW_MM. Now drag off the return value pin from the widget node and search for Add to Viewport. This node lets us actually display the main menu when the game launches. Next, let's add another Get Player Controller node to the graph. Now drag off the return pin from Get Player Controller and search for Set Show Mouse Cursor. Add that to the graph, and make sure to check the box for Show Mouse Cursor. This will turn the cursor on when the main menu appears. Now connect the output of the Add to Viewport node to the input of the Mouse Cursor node to keep the execution flow going. Now drag off the execution pin from the Set Show Mouse Cursor node and search for Set Input Mode UI Only. We're adding this because we want to make sure the mouse doesn't interact with the game world. Now connect the return value pin from the Get Player Controller node to the Player Controller input on the Input Mode UI Only. Then connect the return value from the Create Widget node to the InWidget to Focus input on the Set Input Mode UI Only node. Now click Compile and Save to apply the changes. Once that's done, close the blueprint and let's hit play to test the game. Now we've got our game's main menu with buttons, the mouse cursor is working, and the background looks great. Next, let's add some animations to the buttons, like a hover effect when you move the mouse over them. Also, the font doesn't quite match the style I was going for. After taking another look at the screenshot, I've decided to switch it back to Roboto. I'll open up the UI blueprint and quickly switch the font back to Roboto. And once that's done, we'll move ahead with setting up the button animations. Alright, now I'm happy with the text font. Looks much better and fits the menu style. Now let's create a hover animation for our buttons. To do that, let's jump back into our main menu widget blueprint. Now go to the Window menu and enable Animation. This will open up a new panel where we can create and manage our button animations. Once the animation window's open, click the plus icon to create a new animation. I'll name this one Hover Anim to keep things organized. With the animation selected, click on the text element you want to animate. Then go to the Add button in the animation panel. Under the drop-down, you'll see Text. Click on it, and it'll add our button text to the animation sequencer. You'll notice the button shows up as text block 0 in the animation timeline. To keep things organized, go to the Details panel, copy the actual name of the button, and paste it into the top field where it says Text Block 0. Repeat this step for each button, since we'll be creating a separate hover animation for all of them. Renaming them properly will help keep everything clean and easy to follow. All good. Now we've got the correct name showing for our button in the animation timeline, which will make things a lot easier to manage moving forward. Now click the gray plus button next to the button name in the timeline. First, add color and opacity, and then click it again to add transform. These are the properties we'll animate for the hover effect. On the right side, we'll start adding keyframes to animate the button. To get a better view of the animation length, hold down the left Ctrl key on your keyboard and use the mouse wheel to zoom in or out on the timeline. Click the drop-down arrow next to Transform, and we'll use the Scale property to animate the button when hovered. I want the hover animation to last 0.10 seconds. Then I'll change the scale to 0.95 on both the X and Y axes. This will automatically add a keyframe. If you also want to change the color of the text on hover, you've got two options. You can adjust the color values directly here in the animation panel, or you can go to the Details panel, change the color from there, and then click the small keyframe icon next to the color property to add it to the timeline. And just like that, we now have a hover animation ready to use in our game's main menu. Now make sure you've selected the button, not the text, and check if the Is Variable box is ticked. If it's not, go ahead and enable it. Then scroll down to the Events section and click the plus icon next to On Hovered. This will add an On Hovered event to the main menu graph. Now in the graph, search for a Play Animation node and add it to the blueprint. This is what we'll use to trigger our hover animation when the button is hovered over. On the left side, under the Variables section, you'll see a drop-down for animations. Click on it. Here we have our Hover Anim variable. Drag it into the graph, select Get Hover Anim, and connect it to the In-Animation input on the Play Animation node. If you want to keep your blueprint nice and tidy, you can align the nodes. Just select the first node, then hold Shift or Control and click the node you want to align it with. Press the Q key on your keyboard and it'll align them horizontally. Now click Compile, and we also need to set up the unhovered animation for our buttons. Now go back to the Designer tab, scroll down, and click the plus button next to On Unhovered. This will add a new event to the graph so we can handle what happens when the mouse moves off the button. Select the Hover Anim node and the Play Animation node, then press Ctrl plus D on your keyboard to duplicate them. Now connect the execution pin from the On Unhovered node to the Play Animation node and change the play mode to Reverse. It's a simple but clever and expensive trick to avoid creating a separate unhover animation. Now just click Compile and Save to update the graph. Then close or minimize the blueprint and test the UI to see if the hover animation is working as expected. Looks like the first button was already black, but we can easily fix that inside the UI blueprint. And if you're wondering why I made the button black instead of using a more visible color that fits the background, it's because I copied the color animation style from Ghost of Tsushima's main menu. Don't worry though. Alright, let's add that brush stroke to our main menu buttons. Open the widget blueprint, go to the palette, and search for Image. Drag and drop it onto the second canvas panel we added under the grid panel. Just make sure it's not sitting at the bottom of the hierarchy, because in Unreal, elements at the bottom of the hierarchy actually appear on top in the UI. First, drag the image into the vertical box. Once it shows up inside, you can then drag and drop it into the canvas panel. This way, the image gets positioned underneath the vertical box, so it stays behind our buttons visually. I'm using the left to right fill anchor for this image for now, but we'll switch it later if it doesn't line up the way we want. Let's go ahead and lock the vertical box. This way, we can adjust the image behind the buttons without it getting in the way or interfering with our selection. The size looks good for this button, so now I'm going to import the brushstroke into Unreal Engine. Just a quick tip. Make sure your brushstroke, or any background image you want to use for buttons, is in PNG format. That way, it keeps its transparency and blends nicely with the UI. Now right-click on the image asset you just imported. Go to Sprite Actions and click on Apply Paper 2D Texture Settings. This will optimize the texture for use in the UI. Now back in the UI blueprint, make sure the image element is selected. Then go to the Appearance section and in the Brush or Image slot, search for the image we just imported and select it. Adjust the size of the image again if needed, just to make sure it fits nicely behind the buttons. Also, I just realized the buttons in the Ghost of Tsushima main menu are actually aligned to the left. Sorry for the cut. My earlier recording had some issues at this part, so let me walk you through the alignment guide here. Here, select the button, and in the horizontal alignment options, click on Align Left. That'll snap the button to the left side. If your buttons aren't aligning like you see in this video, double-check that both the left and right padding are set to 0. Repeat this step for all the buttons to make sure they're all properly aligned to the left. This method automatically sets the button size based on the length of the text, so we don't have to manually adjust the padding for each button. Now we can lock the vertical box again and adjust the brushstroke image to sit nicely behind the New Game button. This looks alright to me, so let's go ahead and compile and save it. Now we'll switch over to the graph to make the brushstroke appear only when we hover over the button. Now drag the image variable into the graph and select Get Image. Then drag off the output pin and search for Set Visibility. Now connect the execution output from the Play Animation node to the Set Visibility node. Now select both the Image node and the Set Visibility node, duplicate them, and connect them to the On Unhovered event. Then change the visibility setting to Hidden, so the brushstroke disappears when the mouse is no longer hovering over the button. Now let's close the blueprint and test it out to see if the hover brush stroke is working properly. It's working really nicely, but I noticed the brush stroke is a bit too long. To fix that, head back into the blueprint, adjust the size of the brush image and set its anchor to the left. Then click Compile, hit play again, and now you'll see the stroke fits perfectly. I think it's looking good now, so it's time to create hover animations for the rest of the buttons. Let's go back into the blueprint and unlock the vertical box so we can select each button individually. Instead of creating the animations all over again, let's just reuse the existing setup. We'll duplicate the same animation logic and update it for each button. It's much faster and keeps everything consistent. Since I have 7 buttons, I had to duplicate the animation setup 6 times. Now select the animation in the timeline. Then click on the button you want to animate. In the animation sequencer, find the existing animation. Like in my case, it's for the New Game button. Right-click on it and choose Replace With, and then select the new button, like Enter Legends mode. Now the same animation is applied to this button as well. Just repeat this process for all the remaining buttons to give each one the same hover effect. Before we set up the hover and unhover events for each button, let's first add the brush stroke image to all of them. Just duplicate the existing image 6 times and adjust the size of each one to match the buttons they'll go behind. Now let's lock all the brushstroke images in the hierarchy and unlock the vertical box so we can select the buttons and start adding the hover and unhover events for each one. Now select the second button, scroll down to the bottom of the Details panel, and click the plus button next to On Hovered to create the hover event in the graph. Now go to the graph, select the previous hover animation nodes and duplicate them. Connect the execution pin from the new On-Hovered event to the Play Animation node. Then from the left side panel, drag in the correct animation for this button and connect it to the In-Animation input on the Play Animation node. Once that's done, go back to the Designer tab and click the plus button next to On-Unhovered to add the event. Then connect it to the Play Animation node and make sure to hook up the same hover animation to the In-Animation input. I'm duplicating the animation node for each button to keep the graph clean. You can reuse a single animation node if you prefer, but I like keeping things organized this way. Now we just need to repeat the same process for all the buttons, so I'll fast forward through this part. Now that we have applied the animation to each button, the next step is to attach the correct brushstroke image to each one so they show up properly when hovered. We have a different brushstroke image for each button. The first one is already correct, since that's where I started duplicating the nodes. Now let's go back to the Designer tab, check the name sequence of the brushstroke images there, and then we'll be able to apply the correct image to each button in the graph. For example, if image 5 is assigned to the second button, we'll go back to the Graph tab, drag image 5 from the Variables panel, click on Get Image 5, and connect it to the Set Visibility nodes for that button. Now we can delete the old image node and duplicate the new one we just added. Then connect it to the Set Visibility node under the On-Unhovered event for that button. Let's check each brushstroke image one by one and follow the same steps for all the buttons to make sure everything is connected properly. And yes, I'm just using one image node to connect to both visibility nodes. You can use one or multiple nodes for this. It's totally up to you. The animation will work exactly the same either way. Let's double check that all the nodes are connected properly before compiling. Once everything looks good, click Compile and Save. Then close the blueprint and hit Play to see if all the button animations are working as expected. Everything looks good, except the brush strokes are visible as soon as we launch the game, and the New Game button text is black even before we hover over it. So let's go ahead and fix those issues. Let's open the blueprint, select the New Game button, and change the text color back to white. We had set it to black earlier just to animate the hover effect, but now we'll reset it for consistency. Now let's unlock the brushstroke images in the hierarchy so we can select them and make changes. Select each image, scroll down in the Details panel to the Behavior section, and change the visibility from Visible to Hidden. Repeat this step for each image to make sure none of them show up when the game launches. After compiling the changes, go ahead and click Play to test the game. Now the brushstroke appears only when we hover over the buttons, just like we wanted. So next, let's make each button clickable. I'm also going to change the color of the brushstroke to better match our character. Now double-click to open the UI blueprint. And as you can see, I've already changed the brushstroke color. It's super easy. Just replace the old image with the new one in the Appearance section of the Image widget. No need to animate or resize anything again. Now select the button, scroll down, and add an event for OnClicked. This will create a new node in the graph. From its execution pin, drag out and search for Open Level, then select Open Level by Object Reference to add it to the graph. Now click on the level input to select your game level. In my case, I haven't created a specific level for this yet, but I do have a Paragon Character animation test level, so I'll go ahead and use that one for now. Now drag the execution pin from the level node and search for Set Input Mode Game Only. We also need to connect a Get Player Controller node to the Input node. This makes sure the player can actually control the character once the level loads. Now let's set up the Quit Game button. Go to the Designer tab, select the Quit Game button, then scroll down and click the plus button next to OnClicked. That'll add a new event to the graph for us to work with. Just drag off the execution pin and search for Quit Game, add that node to the graph. And that's it for this button. It's all set up to close the game. We've got a lot of nodes here now, and if you want to keep track of what each group of nodes is doing, there's an easy way to organize them. Just select the nodes and press C on your keyboard. That'll add a comment box around them. You can enter a label for the comment and even change the color to match your mood or organize by function. Super helpful for staying clean and clear in your blueprints. You can do this for all your node groups. It's totally up to you. I just wanted to show you how it's done, especially for beginners who are new to blueprinting. It really helps keep things clean and easy to understand. Now let's compile and save the blueprint, then hit play to test the game and see if both buttons, the level load and quit game, are working properly. Now let's compile and save the blueprint, then hit play to test the game and see if both buttons, the new game and quit game, are working properly. As you can see, it successfully loaded the level, and now we can control our character just like we set it up. I'll close the game by pressing Escape, then launch it again to check if the Quit Game button is working as expected. Both buttons are working perfectly, so now you've got a clean, animated main menu with hover effects inspired by Ghost of Tsushima. If you'd like me to create a pause menu with the same style, or if you have another game in mind, drop it in the comments. The highest liked suggestion will be featured in the next video. And here's the deal. If this video hits 30,000 views and 1,634 likes, I'll create a full pause menu guide for you, step by step. And if 10 of you join as channel members, or if we get a sponsor, I'll also show you the proper way to implement DLSS and FSR in Unreal Engine, fully integrated with a UI for your game. And that's it for this video. Thanks for learning, and as always, keep forging one frame at a time.